Now, many individuals have wondered, well, if the physical ego thinks it's in charge and attempts to shut out all other forms of communication because it doesn't trust them, coming from the higher mind, how do I know the difference between when the physical mind is telling me, oh, this is representative of your excitement, and when the higher mind is telling me this is representative of your true excitement? How can I tell the difference? Because if the ego is attempting to trick me into staying its course, because it thinks if I veer off that we're going to die, it's going to dangle all sorts of carrots in front of me to get me to stay on that course. So how do I tell the difference between that kind of a carrot and the carrot that represents going in the direction of my true self? All right, fair question. It all comes down to what we have spoken of so often. It all comes down to excitement. It all comes down to passion. But again, we hear the ego saying, how can I tell the difference? How do I know it's really my true excitement? Now, this requires paying some attention to yourself. Really paying attention to the true feelings. It does require at least a modicum of willingness. A modicum of willingness to tell the ego to shut the hell up. At least just for a moment, so that I can hear my true self. At least take a breath. At least take a pause. At least stop and wonder whether or not you are actually being shown something that is representative of a fear or something that is representative of a joy. Because we understand that when you're in that confused state, anxiety can actually seem like excitement. And excitement can actually seem like anxiety. But this is why it's so critical to take that pause, to allow yourself to at least be in charge enough, be willing enough to tell the ego to be quiet for a moment so that you can get in touch with your inner being and tell the difference in the quality of the vibration of the emotion you are feeling at that moment with respect to the idea you are exploring. If you are quiet for that moment and willing to be open to be shown what it actually is, you will be able to tell the difference. You'll be able to develop the discernment of the difference between the vibration of fear and doubt and the vibration of joy and certainty. You will be able to tell the difference because that ability to tell the difference is built into you. It's built into your consciousness. And at that level, you all know the difference. But if the ego is making too much noise, if it's not allowing you to stop and think, it does that specifically to prevent you from being able to tell the difference, because it's afraid that if you tell the difference, it won't be in charge anymore. And to the ego, that means death, because it doesn't believe the higher self really exists. So, it's all about finding that space of balance and peace within yourself that will allow you, even if only just for a moment, to allow the ego to be quiet enough so that you can use the natural mechanism of balance within your being that will tell you what the flavor of the emotion you're feeling is, and thus, by identifying the flavor of the emotion, that will then put you in touch with what kind of belief and definition you would have to have in order to be generating that emotion. And then you will know whether it comes from the physical negative ego or from the higher self, whether it is representative of fear, whether it is representative of excitement. But you need that moment of quietude. You need that moment of solitude. You need that moment of peace. You have to be willing to step back. You have to be willing to let it be all right to not know what's going on at the moment. You have to be willing to say, I don't know what's happening here, instead of just assuming it's this or that or the other thing. So anytime you find yourself in doubt about what you're experiencing, take that moment and say, I don't know what's happening, and that's okay. And in that moment, where you have actually admitted that you don't know what's going on, you can find the balance, the quiet, the peace, the stillness that will actually then start to allow you to be more sensitive to the quality of the vibration of what's going on and give you more capability of having more insight as to what you are experiencing and what you are dealing with in terms of the physical mind or the higher mind. So that's the first step in forming the relationship, in reconnecting, in remembering who you are as a whole person. That's the first step, is just taking a moment of quiet, of pause, of stepping back into a neutral place and letting it be all right to not know what the answer is. As soon as you allow yourself to be all right in that balance point, you can allow the natural senses you were created with to begin to fill that stillness, to fill that little void of quietness, and they will begin to be heard. But you have to be quiet to hear them at first, because they have been suppressed for so long in your society that at first it will only seem like a whisper, but you'll recognize it. In the quiet, if you truly allow the quiet to happen, there will be no other sound, and thus you'll be able to recognize the quality of those little whispered voices for what they are. And as soon as you really start paying attention to what they are, you can start to guide yourself with them in the direction of your preference. And as you do that, bit by bit, and this may take some practice, it's all right, bit by bit, you will start to gain more discernment as to exactly what vibration is representative of what, and you will start to pacify the ego into understanding that it's not going to die, it's not going to be annihilated, that in fact this is what it really wants, because it is tired of laboring under such stressful circumstances, it is tired of bearing the weight, and you're going to take the load off and you're going to bring it along. It's not going to go anywhere. It is your friend. You love it. It is serving you. It is designed for a purpose of focusing you in the physical reality experience you wanted to have, in the theme you wanted to explore, and you cannot live without it. Literally, you cannot live without it. So in that sense, while you are forming a more loving relationship with your higher mind, the key to forming a more loving relationship with your higher mind is to actually form a more loving relationship with your ego and not allow it to continue to burden itself unbearably when it has no business doing so, because it was never designed to handle that kind of weight, that kind of stress. So it's all about loving all aspects of yourself enough to be trusting enough to let them fall back into their proper place in the relationship, do the job they were designed to do, and thus then allow yourself to be loving enough to yourself to reap the benefit of that balanced relationship between physical mind and higher mind, so that you can function as a whole person. And so we suggest you to read the book, The Higher Mind Calling, so that these ideas get cemented in your subconscious mind. Does this make sense?
Yes.
All right.